I am here with you from the office, and I actually have Aslan here with me today. Come here, Aslan. So if you hear some whining, it's because I am making him be still here at the office, and he wants to go out and play with everyone. Calorie restriction. In the Omni Diet, I talk about calorie restriction and how to mimic calorie restriction and why. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to start off with a story. So I had the opportunity to interview two of the zoologists from the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo. This is a great story that demonstrates what I'm going to talk about perfectly. And the reason I interviewed them was because they have two gorillas there, Beback and Makolo, that were dying of heart disease, which is the #1 cause of death in gorillas that are warehoused. Warehoused means gorillas in zoos versus being wild. So heart disease, #1 cause of death in warehoused gorillas worldwide. It's a phenomenon, which is odd because in the wild, gorillas don't die of heart disease. Gorillas die of acute illnesses or they're poached. They die of infections and things like that, but they never die of things like diabetes or heart disease. So zoologists began to wonder why this is such a problem with gorillas in zoos. And at the Cleveland Metro Park Zoo, they started studying these two gorillas that they have that were dying of heart disease. They decided they had to do something about this, and they started with their diet. And when I asked them why they started with the diet, they said, well, because it's very common for warehoused gorillas to be fed nutritional cookies. Odd, right? So I said, well, why would you feed them nutritional cookies? They're filled with starch and sugar, and, well, not really sugar. The starch turns to sugar. So why would you give them these cookies? And they said, well, the intention was good. We were trying to make sure they got all their minerals, their vitamins, everything that they needed, all the nutrition in one simple food. Reminds me a little bit of children's vitamins, right? We spend all this time trying to get nutrition into kids, and we sometimes miss the mark by putting it into a vehicle that's not so healthy. So they decided to change the diet for the gorillas to their natural diet, which was about 11 pounds of wild greens, nuts, seeds, bamboo, flax, berries. And they did something. They scattered it around the habitat. So the gorillas now had to forage. They had to move instead of just gobbling up these cookies really quickly. It took them about 75% of the day. Another interesting phenomenon with warehoused gorillas versus wild gorillas is that warehoused gorillas demonstrate these odd behaviors of pulling out their hair. They pluck out their hair and they eat it. And they regurgitate their food up to 4 times an hour. That behavior has never been seen in wild gorillas. So they wanted to try and figure out why this behavior has been only seen in warehouse gorillas. Well, when they changed their diet, guess what happened? Beback and Makolo each lost about 65 pounds eating, get this, double the calories. Their new diet was double the calories. They lost about 65 pounds each. Beback reversed his heart disease, and Makolo radically slowed the progression of his heart disease. And their neurotic behaviors stopped. The point that I'm making with calorie restriction is that you can mimic the effects of calorie restriction. So calorie restriction has been shown not in people, but been shown in certain animals and fruit flies to be the only effective way to extend life. The problem is it's never been studied in people long term because it would take too long, right? It would take about 120 years to study. So I believe that they are trying to study it, but it's a very long term thing and it would take a lot of effort. But there are also some side effects to calorie restriction, things like it drops your testosterone. It causes certain other side effects that are not very desirable to a lot of people, and some of them not so great as far as your health goes. So we don't want you on this radically restricted calorie program, to radically restrict your calories. First of all, people don't do it. It's one thing when you're a fruit fly and you don't have a choice, or you're a lab animal and they're testing you and you have you can't go get your own food. We can tell you what you're going to eat, how much and when. So, but it's different when you have free will, right? We can't get people to do that long term because it's not fun. So when I talk about mimicking calorie restriction, it's getting the desired benefits of the calorie restriction without radically restricting calories. So the reasons that calorie restriction are good for you are things like it regulates your blood sugar. It decreases oxidative stress, which is the oxidation process in your body, a little like rust on a car. It slows down it actually helps to repair DNA and slows down the damage to DNA. Things like that calorie restriction do we can mimic those processes by eating the right foods, not necessarily radically restricting calories. So by doing things like managing your stress, improving your sleep, certain supplements, getting rid of sugar, getting rid of the inflammation in your body. That's what we're talking about with mimicking calorie restriction. Hopefully that makes sense. So it was Laura Heiselman that wrote in about that, and I wanted to clarify that for you. And the gorillas are the perfect example. They lost 65 pounds eating double the calories. They stopped their neurotic behaviors. They reversed their heart disease. That's mimicking calorie restriction because they were eating double the calories. So that is what I want to point out. The quality of your calories matters more. Moving your body matters. Sleeping matters. That's the point.